Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Gruber's Quilt Shop. And we are in our bargain area where we happen to have also our booth where we set up something special. Tonight we have something incredibly special. We have this wonderful book, but not only do we have the book and the quilts from the book, we also have Pam. Pam is the author, and Gruber's has been lucky enough to know Pam for 20 plus years. So I'm bringing Pam on to have you meet her if you've not met her before. Pam used to be with Gruber's. First of all, I didn't know I taught you how to quilt.
You did.
You're
to blame.
The things I did and do or whatever. So we've known Pam for a long, long time. Then she came to work for Gruber's and then she became famous. It started out one day, there was Amy Butler fabric.
Yes.
And Amy Butler at that time was a large print fabric. And so I said, Pam, why don't you make a table runner out of this? And I'll let you tell the rest of the story because they want to hear from you, not me.
She asked me to make a table runner, so I looked through some of the patterns that we had available. Actually, there were lots of patterns already available, but none that really showed off the large prints that Amy was one of the first to develop. So I decided to come up with an idea on my own, so I went home that night and came up with my very first pattern, which is called Harlequin. And strangely enough, although it was published probably 19 years ago now, it's still one of my best sellers. I can't get rid of it. And so once I came back with the picture of the quilt that I thought would show off the fabrics beautifully, Sue said, well, write up the instructions and we'll have a pattern. We can make a model. And that was the impetus for me to actually get my ducks in a row and start doing something that I had been wanting to do for a long time. And obviously working here at Gruber's was the threshold, opening up a lot of contacts for me. Sue was always so willing to introduce me to consequential people in the industry, and she really was a large impetus towards the quilting business that I have today, which goes by the name of Aardvark Quilts, which might be more familiar to some people than my first name. All of my patterns and books are published under the name of Aardvark Quilts.
So this is an example of her pattern. And so if you recognize Aardvark Quilts, this is one of your newer patterns and we love it. Absolutely love it. Oftentimes everybody's, do you have a kit of this? I'm going, no. You can make that girl in any colors you want, and that's what's special about her. This would be an almost impossible kit.
It really would, because there's so little of each individual fabric used, and really part of the joy of that quilt is selecting fabrics that look appropriate for a matryoshka or a hand-painted kind of ethnic-looking doll. So it's really fun to pick out your own fabrics for that one.
I'm going to turn Pam loose on you guys, and she's going to tell you a lot of stories here. So if you like anything here, you'll find it on grubersquiltshop.com and go to Sue's Facebook faves. You'll see this stuff listed there tonight. So
questions?
Yes. Oh yeah, if you have questions, ask away. Pam is here and she'll gladly answer whatever you have. You're hearing maybe Gene in the background. So he'll So he'll handle that. So if you want to start talking,
sure.
We'd love to hear.
Sure. Did we want the people to wait till the end to get their questions answered? They can put them up at any time.
They can.
But then
if they put them up while we're filming, then I can relay them to you.
Especially if it's
hopefully
appropriate.
You can answer.
Okay.
Especially if it's appropriate to the quilt.
Okay.
So Gene will dissect that one.
Okay. No problem at all. This is the third quilt book that I've published. The first one was Colorific. The second one was Parallel Lines, which dealt primarily with stripes. And this third one is Alchemy, or Transforming Scraps into Precious Materials, which is basically what we all do as quilters. I'm going to explain just a little bit about how I came up with that name and how it relates to quilting. And since my memory has been a long time since it was sharp.
Your first two books are retired, correct? I know your very first one is, and was
Parallel Lines is still available.
Parallel Lines
is still available. The first one is only available on ebook from Amazon, I believe. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I came up with the name Alchemy. It's an old term. It refers to a practice from a long time ago that some referred to as being somewhat magic, somewhat science. It is the process of attempting to purify and perfect base materials into precious materials. Historically, alchemy, before the 19th century, was considered a science, and magic, as I mentioned, has a long-standing relationship with art and literature, film, and video games. And I had started thinking, why not quilts? We conduct a transformation process, which is what alchemy is, a transformation process by auditioning colorful fabrics, assessing their relative compatibility, and determining their chemistry, and so on, until the colors sing. It's this intense magic that occurs when the right combination of hue, value, and print come together, which always draws me in again and again and gets me up in the morning. It's that coalescing of science and magic that provides me with the actual mental therapy, sense of purpose, and pure joy that drives me to create and share the following 12 quilt projects.
Yep, but you were born with color.
Oh yes,
You dream.
in all different forms.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I do dream.
You do.
A lot of my patterns come
In
up
color.
at night. In color. Delve into these colorific inspirational quilts and experience this powerful transformative process. The first one we've got hanging here is a somewhat recognizable pattern on its own. As you look at it, you see Storm at Sea. And I have renamed that, since I altered it just slightly, but not too much, into Squall at Sea. It's just a little bit more violent than Storm at Sea, in my opinion. I have used primarily stripes on this. Some of them are striped quilt fabrics from typical quilt shops, and an awful lot of them are men's striped shirts from thrift shops. It's often difficult to get the array and the breadth of stripes that you want from a quilt shop, so I'm not saying don't shop there. Shop there first, but then fill out that spectrum that you want by finding some really interesting stripes in men's shirts. Long sleeve shirts are best for obvious reasons. Same price, but more fabric, and mixing them together. And one of the things that I like about this pattern, excuse me, I'm gonna need a glass of water. at
Yep,
some
go
point.
grab some, because I'm going to tell them the words in there.
Okay.
Water. Do you know where we have water?
Well, I'm
Anyway.
not sure if it's outside the cafe.
No, it's right in my, right behind the checkout.
Okay.
Grab my bottle.
One of the obvious things about this quilt pattern that you see right off the bat is how straight lines turn into curves depending on the angles that are adjacent to one another. The other thing that's really nice is you can create a wave of value by going from light to dark to light. So you add a third dimension and almost a fourth dimension. It just creates a lot of activity. So that's a lot of fun. That's
I
the
like
first
your
quilt in
words.
the book.
I like your words in there too. The big stripe, how cool is that?
Yeah.
But you know, I have another couple ladies in the store here that love to go to Goodwill
Yes.
and just shop for unusual fabrics.
Yeah.
Because some of those you can't find anymore.
No,
They don't
you really
make,
can't.
They don't make fabric well, they make beautiful fabric now, don't get me wrong in that, but they have such unusual antique fabrics.
Yeah, some of the modern fabrics from years ago have some really interesting prints in them that we
Absolutely.
aren't seeing right now in quilt fabrics, and they work so well and play together so nicely with the quilt fabrics.
They do.
Grab a little
I
more.
like it a lot. And that's one of your specialties is stripes.
Absolutely.
You do a great job with playing with them.
Absolutely. I'm very motivated to reinterpret some of the traditional patterns in nothing but stripes, and this is one of those quilts that does that.
And it makes us think so hard because our brains don't work that way.
And it's fun.
And we want to be aligned, and they don't always align.
And in most cases here, they don't have to.
Right.
Yeah. This is a long-standing traditional pattern from Japan. Oftentimes you will see Japanese motifs nowadays on Pinterest a lot, but in other Japanese fabrics and paper designs of this three-pronged shape with the curved edges. I haven't heard a name for that particular shape. I've heard it called hemp, but I don't know if that's definitive. It could be. And I know as you're looking at this, many of you are going to see bikini bottoms. I prefer the Japanese traditional motif. But I've always wanted to make a quilt out of that, and it isn't the easiest quilt to make because it's all applique, but it's definitely a shape worth working at because the graphics that result are just stunning. This is made in two same size large sections of large triangles and one middle section of smaller triangles, which gives a little movement to the pattern, but it's very slight. It's needle turn applique over a little background of charcoal colored prints or solids. And then you build it starting at the bottom, going up, tucking your sides inside each other.
Well, it's hugely
so.
three-dimensional.
It is, yeah. It really
gorgeous.
looks like the dark background is very much in the background.
Yep,
Yeah.
it's pretty.
And this
Want
is
to touch on any of the patterns while you're there, or later?
let's do those later.
Okay.
So the hex appeal is obviously Sue's favorite, or one of them, because you know I
Sue
love the
likes this
60
one.
degree.
Oh,
So it's
okay.
kind of-
Yes, this is absolutely that. Excuse me. This is another quilt in the book that's done entirely of stripes. And again, a few of these are quilt, here we go, quilt fabric stripes. And most of them, in this case, are men's shirts from the thrift shop. But you get a really nice variety that way of different size stripes and different widths of stripes, different combinations of widths and stripes, lights and darks and so on. And you'll be surprised, even though this is kind of a neutral quilt, because there's so much variety within the neutral, it gives it a lot of activity. And the stripes are a lot of the reason for that. This is done very simply by taking a long strip of fabric. Let's see, I'll do a long strip this way. And making sure that the stripes go the length of the strip, cutting your 60-degree triangles, one right next to each other on that strip. So that's how you get these exactly matching hexagons.
You did a very good job on those.
No kidding.
Oof.
Yeah, they were just really fun to play with. And occasionally you have your stripes running this way. Once in a while you can have your stripes running the other way, and you get kind of a snowflake effect.
Gorgeous. Yeah, the effects are beautiful.
Thank you. That's
Really
called
good.
hex appeal. Little play on words there, but maybe not. Hexagons have appeal too.
They do.
Yes.
Totally do. My favorite.
Do you
And this
compare
is-
that to like a stack and whack?
It creates a similar sensation, but it's just slightly different just because of the stripes.
Right.
Yeah, it is somewhat similar. This is a quilt that Sue said was her favorite. The entire quilt was inspired by an artist who does collages in paint and paper and various other really vertical textural materials. His name is Lance Letcher, Lettscher, and he does wonderful things. You can check online, and there's a lot of his work there to admire. This is one that he did with rectangles, and he also does curves. I tried to use fabrics that I thought were kind of painterly and visually textural to look similar to what he did, and then have sort of a neutral effect with accents of bold colors here and there, giving the look of light coming from behind windows, perhaps.
I like
It's
the
called
scale.
frameworks.
Yep, I like the size and scale. They're just gorgeous. How
Thank
it
you.
plays out.
Thank you. And down here, we have a very busy quilt. In fact, so busy I had to name it Hijinks, which in the dictionary is defined as boisterous fun, which I would have to say this definitely is. It's very, very active. And what it is 9 patches at various angles, nestled around diamonds, vertical, horizontal, and so on. So we have a vertical row of diamonds and angular row of 9 patches. And how this is assembled is easier than it looks, in that you go diagonal with your strip or row, and you move on down like so. Your next row would be starting here, move on down like so. You do have set inseams, but they're very open and not at all difficult to achieve.
It gives it a real curved appeal.
Yeah, it's got kind of waves going in that particular one
does.
as well.
But the way you set it, it actually does go together quite easily, because it sure doesn't look like it.
It doesn't look easy, yeah.
No.
Yeah.
But it is cool.
Thank you.
Very
A
cool.
lot of the fabrics in this quilt are fabrics from Japan that are designed by Japanese designers. This is a yukata, and yukata is a cotton that's used in weekday, I should say, kimonos in traditional Japan. That's a yukata. Let's see, where are some of the other Japanese ones?
The silver with the blue has to be
Here,
Japanese.
the kitties. The kitties is a Japanese, and this is another yukata. This one is too,
Yep.
and this one. So they mix really well with a lot of the fabrics that we see here in the quilt shops. There's not present in too many quilt shops that I know of in the United States. A few people have them.
You find
The
that
yukata mostly is available at like Oaken Arts, which is out west somewhere.
Yep, I would say California area would have a lot of this
Exactly.
around Chinatown. For
Exactly. But they mix really well with
They do.
Anna Maria Horner and
Sure. Oh yeah.
Kay Fassett, and so it's really fun to pull diverse fabrics together on this kind of piece because it is so active.
That's half the fun.
Yeah, yeah,
Is the mix and match for sure.
yeah. Now this is our cover quilt. It's called Agape, which just means pure love or full love. I believe that's Latin. That name was inspired by just the lushness of the colors and the way the complementary colors just enhance one another in such a beautiful way. This is a block that's been around for a while. It is a rectangular block,
Yeah.
and it's just a Z shape, if you will, within the rectangular block. You sew these templates together, then the triangle on the top and the triangle on the bottom. So they're pretty easy to put the block together. But what's fun about this particular quilt is where you put your two complementary colors or where you change your values on your quilt, because you get so many interesting different shapes. Here we have kind of a pinwheel.
So when you do
Up
this,
here we have a
when you do this,
kite
Pam,
shape.
do you initially make all of these blocks and then go to your design wall and put them together, or how do you do that?
I cut as I go, and I lay the pieces next to one another on the design wall and lay them entirely on the design wall before I sew any blocks together,
Okay.
so that I can pick and choose what I want, what I like, what I want to change just a little bit to create certain shapes. Like here we've got a kite shape and a
Yep.
diamond shape
Right.
and different shapes. And then as I go around, I want to try something different in a different area.
Yep.
Not too much of the same
And show you.
effect in one area. So I play with it a lot
Gotcha.
before I
So
even sew a block together.
So show your hand quilting in there, how easy it is. Because Charlene and a couple of girls at the store love doing this, and Jill.
Here is, oh yeah, you can see it really well.
Oh, it is.
Big stitch quilting. I use an embroidery needle with not too big of a head, and always number 8 pearl cotton works the best. The reason you want pearl cotton and not embroidery floss is the pearl cotton has a twist to it, which makes it shinier and just a little stronger.
Because it gives it such a unique look.
It gives it kind of a whimsical dimpled effect.
Yep.
It adds dimension also.
Yeah, it
Very
really
good,
does.
it
I'm
does.
always looking for ways to add dimension and visual activity.
It is. Well, it's so neat because, you know, it'd be really easy to do machine quilting on that and just put a lot of thread on, you know, hard stitches. But
Yeah.
using your handwork is so beautiful. It really
And
is.
it's really relaxing to do. It's really easy. You don't need a hoop. You can do it in the car. You can take it to the kids' ball games or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, it's very, very portable.
Yep, long stitching is popular at Gruber's, and if you ever have a question, if Jill is in the store, grab her. She'll be the first one to make you fall in love with it.
Yeah.
Or use Charlene, one of those
I
two.
do it on probably half of my quilts.
Yeah, you do. It's
Yeah.
pretty much your namesake, literally.
Yeah, I do it an awful lot. I'll show it to you on a couple others after
Good.
this. This one is similar to a traditional quilt pattern, but a little bit different. I've used the peel shape, which is really popular right now. This is applique. I give you a template in the book, and I create what I call a trellis by sewing these peel shapes all in one color over a large print. It's especially noticeable on those that have a floral background to them, to create a trellis through which you look to see a garden.
Right, it's
I've
good,
called
good.
this treillage, which is just another name for a trellis. But it was really fun to find these wonderful large prints and then find colors that really enhance them to create this trellis through which you could look at something beyond.
I think you achieved it. It's very cool.
You do
And
see
that's
the
a fun
two-
that's a fun pattern to do.
really
the orange
fun.
peel.
Even though there's a lot of pieces, this is the easiest kind of applique there is
Yep.
to do, is this gentle curve.
Yep.
It's very, very simple to do, and it's really fun to see the wonderful color combinations you can come up with. This is a palette that I don't work with that often. It's got a little purple and pink, dare I say pink in it?
Yeah, you did.
But I think it worked.
You didn't
I
even
like
bite
it.
your tongue. Yeah, it was pretty good.
She knows me.
Yeah.
She knows me.
There's a
Okay.
few of you floating around.
Now here's another use of the big stitch. Looks very much like sashiko.
Very much.
And this quilt itself is very much inspired by Japan. In the style of the quilting is one way, but another way is the fabrics that I've used. These are my jeans that I've cut up, and that's very much in keeping with the way Japanese make use of
Everything.
materials around them for economic reasons and just to
I like that
be
you
efficient.
I like that you changed the color of your threads.
Yes.
Yellow, so it's
yeah,
kinda
there's
cool.
a couple different blues and navies and tans and white.
Creamy whites.
Yeah,
Very nice.
gives it that much more of that boro or
Yep, and it's
bull-
really cool.
um,
It's really cool that you use your jeans because everybody's like, "What do I do with these?"
exactly.
Make a
this
rag
part
quilt?
of the jeans especially is really nice and soft to
Yes.
work with. Exactly. And we all have those.
And it
plenty of
needles
those.
well.
Yes. And blue, of course, is such a well-loved color.
Yep, very
So-
much so.
We can use that as we need to.
That is pretty.
Oops, I'm going to switch these around. Jean was testing me to see if I know the names of my own quilts.
He,
Asked
he-
again.
he has that talent.
Yeah. Okay.
Good.
Here we go. Okay. Here's another quilt from the book, which is Japanese inspired. Not only for the fabrics that I used a lot of fabrics directly from Japan. These are two. This is a silk kimono fabric. There's a couple other silk kimono fabrics in here. One right up there. Some of my own design that kind of were influenced by Japan. And the whole reason that I started this quilt to begin with was the way that this psychodoodle fabric, which is one of my designs, cuts up into a ball. It just, from the
Looks like
time,
a lava ball almost.
So when
yeah, looks like something's going on in there, like a lava lamp.
There
So
you
you're
go.
thinking. So that made me think, oh, I've got a lot of other Japanese fabrics that will cut up nicely into tamari, which are Japanese balls of thread that are given as gifts for friendship and loyalty and love. So it's got a lot of meaning. And then you show a lot of activity by These are all needle turn applique, by the way. But by spreading them around in somewhat random fashion, which the book shows you how to do, and then also by having a very busy background, it creates even more movement and bouncing and activity in a very small quilt.
So you have a favorite technique for needle turn? Because you have all different size circles going.
Do I have a favorite technique?
Yep. So how are you making your circles? Is it just
I just trace around
Trace
them
around 'em?
and fold it with my finger and needle.
Yeah.
I don't use anything behind them. A lot of people who use circles will trace around the acrylic circles, and that works fine, and then press your fabric around. But I often want circles that don't have matching plastic templates or whatever, so I just use the paper templates, and then I just turn them myself. I just like that sensual feeling of doing a lot of that by hand, up close and personal.
Very
I have
cool.
a question about the cushion.
Okay.
Do you use stretch denim, regular denim?
I use regular denim, not stretch.
Yeah.
If you only have stretch to use, you'd want to put it on like a woven interfacing to eliminate that stretch before you put it in the pillow. Yeah,
Almost like a t-shirt.
exactly.
You don't want that.
Yeah.
That comes back to haunt you if you don't.
Yes, yes. You'll see a little wave in your
Yes.
quilt if
Yes.
you don't stabilize it prior to that. This is a blue and white quilt, which, as been mentioned earlier in this talk, is blue and white are just a classically loved combination. It's a somewhat simple quilt, just rotary cut squares within a block. But what happens with this particular quilt is we create the illusion of weaving under and over and under and over to create a nice woven effect.
You did.
And as I often like to do, I'll sometimes drop out certain colors to create more levels in the visual palettes, visual planes, I should say. Sometimes I'll change colors just slightly to give it even more depth.
You accomplished it well. So you have a degree though in art, not art, but what is it?
I have a degree in art
In art.
and a minor in marketing.
Marketing.
But yeah, my
Yep.
major
So you've played
full
with
degree is art.
You've played with color for just a little bit.
As far back as I can remember,
Yes.
yes. As a child, I've always been fascinated by color.
You like that crayon box?
Absolutely. The stadium of colors is one of my biggest thrills when you open up a box of crayons and the stadium at different levels of all these brand new crayons.
Simple pleasures, right?
It's a sensual pleasure. It even smells good.
Yes.
Yes, I do
It
enjoy
does.
playing with
Okay,
color.
talk about green. You got beautiful green going here.
Okay.
Not
Right.
that I love avocados, but I do.
Right now, avocados are extremely popular to eat, and they're healthy, and there's nothing but good to say about avocados. And I noticed not only that, they look good when you cut them in half.
Yes.
There's something about that shape, and there are 3 different templates in here for the different shapes of the avocados. That's just really very pleasing. I threw in a couple that have yet to be peeled, just for some additional color.
Yeah.
And there's needle turn applique on both the pits and the outer rim of the avocado, but very simple. It's a nice easy curve to do, and it's really fun in this case trying to pick out different fabrics that look like the pits and that look like nice ripe avocados, some overly ripe, some nice and fresh, and it's just a real joy to work
It's
with.
actually a perfect form to learn how to do needle turn.
It is.
Because it's not a circle, so you can't screw it up.
Yeah, if you're trying to
You really
do
can't.
a perfect circle like this one, that's hard.
Yes.
You're doing pretty good as you come around here. When you start getting here,
Yep.
it's very difficult to make it perfect.
Yep.
And this is a little bit easier, so you've got the point on either end, but this is the easiest.
So easy.
Yeah.
So easy. And it is cute. And besides, the avocado is the good fat. So
It's
you're
the good fat. Nothing
You're totally good. If
nothing
you,
but good about
avocado oil, it's just the best.
avocados.
I go through an awful
Absolutely.
lot of it at our house. I'm a
Yeah.
firm believer in it.
Good stuff. And the last one from the book is a very old traditional pattern, log cabin, except this one has just a little bit of a modern twist to it. There's blocks of 4 sections for this particular quilt, and this is your section, excuse me, your center, and then you take different width strips and build at right angles around it. You don't do
cool. There's
all the way around like you would do with a typical log cabin. You do a right angle, starting with this, and again, vary the size of those strips, anywhere from 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, to 1 inch strips.
that is really cool. So kind of like the courthouse steps, but I love your variation of
I know, like a courthouse
logs.
steps.
It's very
Yeah,
cool.
it's nice to. It makes it look a little bit like improv.
It
But if you're
does.
not comfortable with improv, this will give you some guidelines
Safe, yes.
as you go about putting it together. And I liked to do a set opposite one another in each one of the blocks.
And visually it makes you think, because you know there's something different going on, but you don't know what it is. And I didn't catch it till now. I thought they were just kind of randomly different, but I didn't. It's like, oh my God, this is really cool.
Yeah,
Very
there's
cool.
There's pairs somewhat, and that goes around the width of the quilt.
Oh.
And in the center section, it is a little jumbled and mixed up more because there aren't matching opposite one another, and then periodically, in a somewhat
match.
random form, there are smaller blocks that are paper pieced because of their size. They're so small. So here we have matching within the paper pieced.
Very nice.
Here, and those are random throughout. So you can add just a little bit more color if you
Very
want
cool.
there or not, but certainly add just a little bit more visual texture.
Another really easy. So do you play with a palette, a color originally, or do you just kind of grab stuff and start sewing?
I pull.
You pull.
Yeah, that's just too fun a process to skip.
It's too fun.
Yeah, I go into my stash and start pulling and laying them out. And then I don't always end up with the same ones I pulled. You know, that's the beginning, and that's kind of the template. And then I add a little bit to that as I go. And that kind of leads to the question that I often get asked: do you cut out all your fabrics at the same time at the beginning? And absolutely not. No way, never. I start with a block, see what it looks like, put it up. Then I'll cut some more. Put that up, always using the design wall between every step. And then so I might decide that I don't want to continue something that I did here. So if I have it all cut out, I feel kind of locked into that.
Yeah.
But I want to be able to evolve
Evolve.
as I'm making the quilt.
So you like
flexible.
505. What do you do with a lot of 505?
What a
505 spray.
I make my quilt sandwiches with it.
Silk sandwiches, okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, so what are you
Yeah,
working
I
on
always
now?
use that.
I know you do.
Oh, I'm just finishing up one which is somewhat similar to this in that it's a rectangular Z block, but it's only about this wide, and so the Z goes like that.
Oh, cool.
And it's kind of all in blacks and whites,
Ooh.
and they're real narrow blocks, so there's like rows of
Any idea when we'll see
blocks.
that?
Maybe next week.
Oh, soon.
Yeah, it's
very
called
soon.
Zeitgeist because it's a Z block, so I need that
Geist?
one. Zeitgeist.
Oh, Zeist. All right.
Zeitgeist. It's
Where
a
does that
German
come
word
from?
for like
It's
culture.
for German.
Culture.
Got it.
It means culture or a style or a way of doing things, kind of.
Very cool. So does your brain ever stop?
Yes. Oftentimes when I'm doing public speaking, it
Ah.
stops.
Funny how that happens,
Yeah.
right?
This
Takes
is
a little
just-
vacation.
This is just between you and us.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
It is.
No, yeah, it'll stop. I have that condition that a lot of us have in our 60s where words escape us. It's like, I know that word. I know the word. It starts with S. I just can't remember what it is. But
Yeah, and it's not, don't put a name behind it because it's just what we're doing.
it's just what we
Pam,
do. Yes.
don't you remember Pam, our Beth used to say, my brain is full, or the hard drive is full? She used to
Yeah.
have a favorite thing that she used to say. But yes. You have, so how many patterns do you have? Do you have any idea your count of patterns that you have now?
Yeah, 85.
Oh, jeez. All right then. So
Yeah.
your brain doesn't go on hiatus for very long, does
I
it?
have this. I'm so blessed in this regard. I've lost no mental ability when it comes to being creative
Isn't that great?
and memorizing and knowing colors, but like names and words, and that's the kind of thing that
Well,
aren't coming as quickly as they used to.
well,
you
that's
know.
just detail.
Yeah, it is.
The big picture.
In my case, it's the color and the creativity that I
Well, look what you've
really,
done.
you know.
That's one thing you've always.
Carol was asking what size that modern log quilt is.
Ooh,
That's a good question.
she'll look for
I
that.
think.
So, when Pam was at Gruber's, it was always a joy having her because she always picked out something different. So you could always find her. Her quilts were always unique to everybody else. So, granted, you were a protege of Cave's. So,
Yes,
so when Cave came a couple times, actually, he stayed at your cabin, didn't he?
he did.
You were on the Mississippi River. It's like
Yes.
a little bit not what he would do, but it was great. And he and Brandon both loved it. So
Yeah, okay.
it
This
was a great experience.
called Modern Log is no 48 by 60.
So did you
I
get
should
that?
point out this book also has all of the directions and measurements in French.
Oh, yay.
One
Yeah.
side French and one side English.
French, English, French, English.
So you can expand your vocabulary and your languages this way.
Absolutely. There's a lot to learn from this book.
Yeah.
More
Oh,
than a normal
And that's
book would
because
have.
it's published by Quiltmania out of Nantes, France.
yes. Which is amazing that they picked you up and did that. They don't do that for everyone.
No,
They just, they're very selective in what they do.
they
So
don't produce a
obviously,
lot of books. Yeah.
obviously in Europe you're very popular, which is kind of cool. So you're now international.
Yeah.
So they just had the International Quilt Show, what, was 4 months ago?
2 months ago,
2 months ago?
it was the what they call the love of the thread, I believe it is, Pour l'amour du fil in Nantes, France. And then they also have the European Patchwork Show, which
Right.
I think is what you're thinking of.
Yes.
And that usually is in the fall, but things have been rescheduled and changed a lot just because of the pandemic. So I'm not sure when that's coming up.
So most of this was there for the spring show,
Yes.
correct? And so
Yes.
these quilts were basically stuck in France for about a year and a half because of
Yes.
COVID. So they just came home about 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago, yes.
So it's like, so we are so honored that Pam is joining us tonight to show off her quilts because there's such a unique appeal. You play with things that everybody else wouldn't think of playing, and that's what's so great about your quilts. Playing with stripes is huge, like your book that you said was the stripes book. That was just phenomenal.
Parallel lines.
Parallel
and
lines.
That's still available.
And that was by, so if you want that from Gruber's, I think we had carried it for quite a while and don't have it now, but it's easy to bring back in because
Yeah,
it
you can
teaches
still
you
do
how to
that.
play with lots of different stripes. So Kate did that for a little bit when he played with stripes. And you went beyond what he did and just went crazy with them. It was wonderful. And then obviously the original book that she had, if you can find it maybe on Amazon under used books, you might find it.
Right.
And a lot of people really liked that book. That one was by, not C&T, who wrote that?
Yes,
Was it
C&T.
C&T did. That was a great book
C&T,
too.
and it's called Colorific.
Yep, it was really great because that's Pam's. They did a really good job with the colors on that, or if I remember correctly. There's something that was really outstanding about it. So that's a retired book. So every once in a while, you can find it show up on Amazon, or somebody's turning.
Yeah.
Somebody's
There's almost
turning
always
in.
some used ones on Amazon.
Yes,
for
which
that
is
one.
really great. Or you might find it at a garage sale where somebody doesn't realize what they have. So every once in a while, you find like a Genie buyer or something where somebody's just giving
Yeah.
it away. It's like, whoa, you had no idea that the baby's worth $100, if not more. So yeah, Colorific was a great book, a super great book, and obviously this is her third book. So if you like it, we have it at Gruber's, and we carry a lot of stripes in our store, whatever we can get from Cape and that whole genre. But Tulip Pink has also come with stripes, and she has a nice selection of those too. So. Otherwise, hit the thrift stores, just like Pam said. I have somebody who pretty much only makes quilts with men's antique shirts, and they are such a beautiful palette. A lot of them are softer and not quite so loud, but there's so much room to play with those. Like you said,
And they mix really well
Oh,
with
they
the
do.
quilt shop stripes.
they really do. They just melt in it. But obviously, try to look for long sleeves. Gives you a little bit more cut.
Extra large too.
Extra large.
Even better. Same
Yeah, I don't
price,
think they
even
made a
better.
lot of extra larges back then. Our sizes have changed a lot, really a lot. So, your advice to quilters if they want to play with your palettes and what you're thinking of, what can you give them?
Well, I tend to work really, really scrappy. And there are many advantages to doing that. One of them is if you see a quilt here that you like and you want to repeat it really close to what it is, if it's done from one fabric line and that fabric line is no longer printed or in stores, you're in trouble. But if you go really scrappy, you can find fabrics in all the different colors in the quilt. Don't necessarily need to be the same print, and you can get a very similar effect. And the other thing is when you work really scrappy, none of the fabrics have to carry as much responsibility for enhancing or matching the color next to it as they do if there's maybe 6 colors in the quilt. If you have 63 colors in the quilt, there's less responsibility on each one of those fabrics to go perfectly with the one next to it. Plus, it's just so much more fun to pull different colors together from different sources and see what magic effects they create. It's just so much fun. It's so satisfying.
It is.
That I highly recommend trying it if you're not doing it already.
Yeah. And you see a lot of that show up with Tula Pinks. A lot of people don't just stay in hers, but they introduce a lot of her fabric into other things.
Yes.
And that's what's really cool. So while you'll see a lot of her show up with Cave or Brandon or, you know, Phillips, and you know, there's just that whole corner of the store is just fun to play in because you never know. Like you said, you'll find some of the help me,
Japanese.
yeah, and the Anna Marie Horner.
Anna Marie Horner. My quilts usually have obviously some K facet in them. Some Anna Marie Horner. Marcia Durst is another one that I use a lot. And the Japanese yukata fabrics and some of the Yua and Koka fabrics. Alexander Henry has some really unusual fabrics out there. So it's just really fun to draw from all these different designers and create just combinations that will blow your mind.
So you'll find all these
beautiful.
patterns that Pam has showed you tonight in her book. So there's
Modern log is on page 58.
right there, yep. So, and my favorite is
Frameworks.
Frameworks is somewhere.
There.
There it is. Yep. So yeah, it's a great book. Great lessons
And you can get them.
at Gruber's.
All right.
Yep, just go on grubersquiltshop.com under Sue's Facebook Faves, you'll see this. So we have a lot of them in stock. We love them. Like I said, Pam does a very good job on teaching you something in all of her books. So, and if you need the bikini, here's your bikini. If you want to call it that. Otherwise, you can be more ethically correct and not. But this one, think of what you have at home. Look how much fun you could have playing with this.
You could use a lot of different fabrics.
Oh my
in that one.
gosh.
You
So,
really could.
in case you guys didn't get rid of all your stash in 2020, which, you know, that was always my New Year's resolution, was to get rid of your stash. And obviously face masks and everything else took care of a big bunch of it. But look at all the dimension and different textures and stuff that you can put into this. It would be just delightfully fun. So if you remember the quilts from G's Bend, did that one? That's what this reminds me of.
Yes,
Very
yes,
much
because
so.
there's so many sizes and shapes of the
Yes.
rectangles.
And
Yeah,
if you guys
absolutely.
remember the quilts from G's Bend, that was basically, they were sheltered on an island off of North Carolina, I believe, and they were not slaves, they were free, but they took all their scraps and stuff they had left over from making clothes or whatever and made these amazing quilts. So you can use anything in your quilt. There's no rules, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So tell us
These
about
are
your other
just
stuff.
inspiration and springboards where you come up with your own
Absolutely.
absolutely magical combinations.
Yes.
Sue has a couple of my patterns here also. She carries a lot of my patterns. Thank you for that. This is one of the newer ones called Circular Reasoning, which has been really popular. And earlier Sue showed you Matryoshkas, which was the nesting dolls. And here's one that's really popular, Bohemian Rhapsody in blue, done with peels again,
can
in
always
kind of
play
a
a little-
modern version.
Play a little queen with that. That'll be okay to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I've done it myself. And I have some baby quilt patterns too.
And that's been huge.
This
Everybody
is
loves that one.
So simple and has a nice little modern playful look to it. Baby Mod Squared. I use this pattern to make a new quilt for my 3-month-old
Yep. Owen.
first grandchild. This is called Baby Mod Squared.
Yep. And it's nice because you know you can use big prints in that. That's what's kind of fun about it. And it goes together very fast.
So simple. Yeah, not a lot of piecing on
No.
this.
So you could be a beginning quilter and be happy. Or an old quilter and be happy also because you're done. So, any other thing that we can tell you about? It's Thursday night in Gruber's. We're glad to have you. And if you missed it last night, the Aurora Borealis was out. If you were from Little Falls North, if you got friends on Facebook, oh my gosh, they were absolutely gorgeous. The whole color of the spectrum of the rainbow. It wasn't just greens. It was just beautiful. So, if you are from,
inspired one of my quilt patterns.
Oh my gosh, that was a
many
great
years ago.
one.
Yeah.
It's called Borealis, right?
Yes.
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 Didn't you do that for the Minnesota Quilt Show?
I did.
Yes.
It was the raffle quilt in the colors of the Borealis, the black with the purples and golds and greens.
Boy, we sold a lot of that for a while. It was gorgeous. It was a lot of work. It was beautiful.
That one's a bit of work.
It was a lot of work. So, and you know what? Anything worthwhile is a lot of work. So you've always known that, whatever you do. So if you have any questions, we can always stream them to Pam. Otherwise, you have a website.
I have a website, aardvarkquilts.com, so very easy to remember.
Yes. So you can visit Pam there if you like. Otherwise, we can filter it through Gruber's and get questions to her if you like. We are super honored that you were here with us tonight. Thank you.
Sue.
It's wonderful having you.
Likewise.
It was with books. The book is great. You're going to learn a lot from it. Obviously, a little bit of French if you want. I didn't think that was in our version. They all have French in it.
They all have French on one side, and
if you ever
English on the
follow
other.
Maureen and I, we have the worst time with French. Ich spreche Deutsch. So we see
Yeah,
these words
me too.
and they're in French. It's like, oh Lord, here we go.
I know very little French.
I only know one line.
Trellis is one of them.
I know one
Very
line, and
few.
you can get yourself in trouble because it's from a song.
Yeah.
You cannot say that in Europe. I found out the hard way.
You can't say.
No, there was just a song, and it was voulez-vous something other, and I had no idea what it meant.
Oh, voulez-vous que je avec moi
Yeah,
ce
thank
soir?
you.
Yes.
There you go.
It reminds me of a Halloween one time.
Yeah, there you go. So there's our story, and we're stopping there before we get ourselves in deep where you don't want to go. But anyway, we're grateful that you came. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. We hope you learned something. If you have any questions, message us, let us know, and we will gladly answer them. We have a lot of these types of fabrics that you can play with the store. If you look at frameworks, we have a lot of that stuff coming in. Marie Dursey, Marcia, thank you, has a line of fabric coming out that would be just
beautiful,
amazing in that. So we're looking forward to a lot of that. So thank you guys for joining us. We have a modern room at Gruber's that's just calling you out. So come on and play at Gruber's. We'd love to have you. You can find a lot of this also on our website. Most of our fabrics are starting to appear there. So it makes it easy for our people who are not in the neighborhood. So thank you again. Have a beautiful Thursday evening, and we'll see you next on Monday.